So obviously, there's a lot of lifting and working out going on in what we're doing. I like to cover the biochemical stuff because it's more fun for me, and I think it's pieces that you're not going to get elsewhere. The lifting part you can get lots and lots of places. At the end of the day, what we have to have for muscle growth is damaged muscle tissue, and then you have to have all the chemicals that help put it back together: the testosterone, the branch chain stuff, the collagen for all the other amino acids, the ATP function, the oxygen, like that. All the chemistry stuff is more fun for me, so I do a lot more of that. The lifting part is the problem with the lifting part is that's time. So in its commitment and its dedication, there's so much more mental piece in that we're going to get into a little bit more as we go through, because that's really also really fun for me. The lifting part, I do the same exercises every day. I've done them for the same 2 years. I do them in my home gym. You don't need a fancy gym. You don't need, a $500 a month gym or a $100 a month gym. I have dumbbells and cables and body weight. That's all I use. At the end of the day, muscles do one thing. They contract, and they contract in a very specific movement that we call that the range of motion, or the ROM. Some of the abbreviations you're going to see: ROM, range of motion; RROM is restricted range of motion. So what you do is, or what I've always done, is I've tried to figure out what is my goal. Like that's how I start all the things I do, which is why a lot of times I do things differently than other people, because when they get involved with something, they're like, "Oh, this is what everybody does." I'm like, "All right," and I look at it and I go, "What is my goal?" And when I figure out what my goal is, it'll alter the way I do things. So for instance, medical is, how do we make as much money as we can off your disease? My goal is, well, how do we fix the disease? So two different goals, so that way we have two different total outcomes. So with mine, it's, I want to grow this muscle. All right, how are we going to grow that muscle? Well, what does that muscle do? It contracts. What is the range of motion that it contracts? So for instance, the bicep is, the arm comes together. This is the entirety of the motion of the biceps, okay? So you should isolate that specific motion. So if the shoulder moves at all, you're breaking form. If your back moves, so you're swinging your weight, you're breaking form. So what you have to do is you have to isolate all of the movement into that one specific movement. And muscles were almost always, hamstrings different. I think the hamstring is the only one that activates more than one joint, which is a cool thing, and I'll go into that later, but I think that's more nerdy than it is functional for this. So the bicep moves the elbow joint, okay? And it approximates or brings it together, right? So it does this. So when it does that, how do I focus all the things around that? How do I resist that motion? That's how I focus on all my stuff. People come up and be like, well, if you do hammer curls, or you do preacher curls, or you do, this type of thing, it works the muscle differently. Not really. I mean, it might work a slight piece of it differently, different, if you're trying to focus on a different head for bodybuilding or something like that, like in the quadricep by moving your feet around. Okay, maybe, maybe you'll get a little bit more focus on one spot. You can feel it more in one spot. And that's great. Again, I'm not saying that there's any wrong way to lift. Let me take that back. There's a lot of wrong ways to lift. If you're trying to focus on individual heads and, tweak your feet like this or like that, or, curl your pinky out just a little bit more, that's all in the fine minutia stuff. And some of that stuff is beneficial. Some of it's not. For the 99% of people, don't worry about that very much, because you're not going to be on stage. You don't really care to that level. Getting the 1% difference in the lateral part of your head versus the medial part doesn't matter to you at all. And a lot of times, because you really see those changes when you're at, 4 or 5% body fat, and you've been doing them for a long time for a very specific goal, that's the only time that you see those little tiny changes. People get discouraged by them, and so they don't lean into them. So figure out how the joint works, figure out how to resist that motion, and then do that. So that's basically how all that's done. You can do it a lot of different ways. And I'll make some videos. I've made some. I don't know if anybody's going to care. So I'll post some of those on the Pillars of Wellness website here for too very long. But like the way I do my chest day is I start off, I do 6 sets of press, dumbbell press, and I do 5 sets of flies, cable flies. That's all I do. But when I do them, I start off and I go really slow. So I usually will get about 7 reps, my first 3 sets. And then we'll do 4 faster sets at the end. And so I'll get 7 in the first 3, and then I'll do 17 to 20 on the last ones with the same weight. But I go really, really slow because the way I want to start this off is I want to exhaust the muscle. Again, however you're lifting, if when you're done lifting, you could do more, you failed. If you lifted heavy, if you lifted light, if you did time under tension, if you did whatever you did, if when you get done with your workout, you could have done an extra set, you failed. Because the point of the exercise is to damage the muscle as much as you possibly can while you're in the gym so that it can grow later. So that's, and then that piece has a little bit of continuity to it. So I'll finish that in a second, but that's the thing. So I go really slow. I usually do about a 5 by 5. So 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down on each one of them for the first one. My second and third set, the last couple ones, we don't get to 5 by 5, but we get close. So, but the thing is that each one of those sets, the musculature is completely exhausted. Like I can't do 8. I can't do an 8th or a 9th rep, or I would. But I try to keep it to the point where the first ones are really slow. The second, the third and fourth are maybe a little bit faster. So it's 5 by 5, 6 by 6. And then towards the end, it's more 3 or 4 by 4. So, and I'm going to make a video of this and I'll post it here with each other long on what I'm talking about. I'll post it on Pillars of Wellness. But that's kind of what I'm talking about. So, and then when I do lats, I do my lats, individual hands. I don't use the bar. And the reason I don't use the bar is because the range of motion for your lats is here. If you have a bar, my head's in the way. So here, I'll back up to Instagram and see it. So it's here. That's your lat movement. If you have a bar, my head, my shoulders, everything's in the way. So I have to do that individual hands like that. So I like to use the cable cross for that. I think the cable cross is best for lat. The lat bar I think is a terrible use because you got it behind your head. Now you're not doing it right because everything's pitched wrong, or in front of your chest. And now we're talking about rhomboid row. So that's the way I like to do it. I'm sure lots of people are going to argue that using the bar is the best way and whatever. I don't care. But I also like to break everything up and give individual joints, individual function. So that's the other thing. That is probably the biggest departure lifting for me with everybody else. I will not use bars when I work out. No bench bars, no squat bars, no hack squat bars, like no bars. Each individual body part gets trained individually. So my right arm has its full range of motion. My left arm has its full range of motion. I mean, if you just look at bench press, right? The natural range of motion for the shoulders is here. Your arm's supposed to come all the way across your body. You can't do that with a bar because as the bar comes up, it's restricting the range of motion for your shoulders, which is why the vast majority of men who have been doing heavy bench for years have shoulder damage. My shoulders were hurting. My dad had both of his shoulders scoped from bars. I quit using bars as soon as I could, a little after college. I realized that I couldn't do it because my shoulders were getting messed up. So I went to dumbbells, and all of a sudden, now that I could do that range of motion and actually have everything come together the way the shoulder is designed to function, my shoulders quit hurting. So that's the thing. That's when I kind of clued in that, if we go back to the way the body actually works, what is my goal? My goal is to work that muscle in that joint. Well, if that joint can't perform its natural, normal function, how am I working? I'm just damaging the joint. So that clued me into, okay, what are our goals? Our goals are to strengthen the musculature. What does the musculature do? It approximates a joint. And for flexors, they approximate joints. All right, so we're bringing that joint closer together. How does that joint move? I can't do that full range of motion with the setup I have, with the bar I'm using, with the exercise I'm set up for. I have to change the exercise I'm doing to accommodate what the body needs. And so that's why I quit using bars. There's a whole lot of things you can do with your legs that don't require a squat bar that's going to crush your spine and do all sorts of damage from your neck all the way down. But if that's your thing, if getting under a heavy amount of squat and lifting, that's what clears your head, that's what makes all the crazy go away, and that's what makes you happy, great. Let's do that. Let's just make sure that we're, balancing the spine. Is your testosterone high enough? Are you doing decompression or inversion tables? Are you, taking care of your low back? Are you doing, SLRs? Are you working the musculature that protects and stabilizes your spine? Because if you're not, you're going to have problems. It's a maintenance issue. If we're going to add damage to the body outside of what we should, we need to add maintenance to the body outside of what we normally would do to buffer that. That's the entirety of this whole thing. So if you are doing squats, make sure you're doing extra work for your glutes, for your glute med, for your paraspinals, for your quadratus, for all the musculature in your low back. Make sure you guys are getting that work done, because if you're not doing that work, you're going to end up, damaging your spine. So I always tell people, discs only herniate for one reason. A force is put in the spine's too weak to handle, and the spine fails. Squats are pressure into the spine or forces into the spine that are abnormal. So if you don't build the musculature up to support you, just wearing a belt's not going to get the job done. It's going to give you this false sense of security, but it's not going to get the job done. So strengthening the musculature that stabilizes the pelvis, the pelvic floor, and the lower spine is going to be hypercritical if you're doing heavy squats. Again, you don't have to do heavy squats. I don't. I use body weight for mine. But that's kind of up to you guys how you want to play it. If you guys have any questions, hit us up, questions at chalmerswellness.com, and we'll start posting some of these videos. All the videos of what we're doing for food and diet and all that type of stuff, and some of these exercise stuff is going to be at pillarsofwellness.com. So you guys go check that out. You can get all the supplements and stuff there as well. So, all right. Well, tonight we're doing a deal with Max, I think at 5:15 Central Time, about cholesterol, heart attacks, strokes, plaquing, some of the lies that are going around about that, and what you need to do if you think you have any of those issues. It very well could save your life or someone else's life that you love. So watch it and share it with everybody you can. It's a big, big deal. I'll talk to you guys later today, and I'll see you tonight. So thanks for your time.